Well, this time we're gonna be talking about Overwatch, a game I never thought I'd be playing, much less reviewing on my channel. This is one of those online-only, multiplayer-only, competitive first-person shooters that I honestly never liked or cared about because I don't like competitive gaming, yet somehow I ended up playing over 100 hours of Overwatch and actually I enjoy the game a lot. However guys, before we get into the review, there are a couple things I want to talk about first so that people watching this review understand just who is reviewing the game and why the gameplay footage you see doesn't quite represent the game as it is for most people. And that is because I'm a severely visually impaired guy. Now, I work as an illustrator for children's books and I like drawing a lot, I play games a lot, and for single-player games, it's usually not an issue. However, obviously for competitive multiplayer games where people with much better eyesight often play, this is a problem, so I tend to stay away from them, and I'm not a competitive person by nature anyways. I don't want to be a burden on anybody, I don't want to drag the team down, so honestly, if Overwatch didn't manage to win me over, I wouldn't have played this. Now, explaining my situation in the house and the whys of it all would take up an entire video, and that wouldn't be any fun now, would it? So I'm just going to try and show you guys just how little of the game I can see at a time and how little situational awareness I actually have. You see, in order for me to be able to see better, to be able to distinguish some of the targets that are on screen and be able to distinguish people from the background, I have to sort of zoom in with my glasses, and to do that I usually prop them up on my nose. However, that reduces my field of vision even more. I already only use my left eye because my right one ain't right, well, my left one ain't right either, but at least it's useful for something. I use it to draw, I use it to look at monitors and such. And I always do that by sort of zooming in and propping my glasses up on my nose. However, as you can see, that leaves a very little room for me to see anything else with that eye, and even in that small circle that I can actually see, I can't really focus on everything at all times, so it really is an issue. I do my best and I play the game as best as I can, but my best is not good enough for me to play the game properly and to be on par with more skilled and less visually impaired people, right? So that's why the gameplay footage you're about to see is probably not going to represent the game as it should. However, I like the game a lot and I really wanted to review it on my channel. So, why do I like a game that doesn't take me out on an adventure, that doesn't tell me a story, even though it has the potential for that, and it's a competitive online multiplayer only game? It's not even an MMORPG, and I love MMORPGs. Well guys, it's because the game is immense fun. And of course because it has outstanding art direction, character designs, environments, colors, everything. It's just bursting with beauty. So that's what initially drove me to give the game a chance during open beta or beta, however you pronounce that. We just call it beta here. So, I don't know. Now, there are plenty of these modern-day online-only games with pretty graphics, great art direction and such. However, many of them are too hardcore, too serious. They have steep learning curves, and they're just not the kind of games I enjoy at all, especially those MOBA games I hate so much. I will never play those. I've tried them, and they're just terrible for me. However, Overwatch is a very casual-friendly game. It's a very accessible game so that even less skilled players, such as myself, can have a good time with it. Now, don't you all be getting the wrong idea here. I'm not saying that Overwatch is a shallow, simple game. No, all I'm saying is that Overwatch is an easy to pick up and play game, easy to understand game. However, it's one of those games that is very difficult to master, and if you just want to play the game casually like I do, you can do that, and you're gonna have fun with it. However, if you really want to get into it, and if you really want to understand the systems it has in place, and if you want to get a little bit more competitive and play with and against more skilled players, you're going to have to do a lot of practicing and a lot of learning. You have to understand the ins and outs of each character. You have to understand their different skills and abilities and how they affect you as a player when you face up against these characters on the battlefield, and how you can affect other players when you control these heroes. You also have to learn and understand the map's layouts. Now, these maps are gorgeous to look at, but they're also built in a way so that players and teams can have tactical advantage over their opponents, or they can help each other, heal each other, whatever needs to be done. This is especially true for the longer maps where you have to escort or prevent the other team from escorting a certain moving vehicle. They're referred to as payloads in the game. So, all this is going to come naturally over time. You shouldn't be stressing over it, but it's something that you really need to learn if you want to enjoy and play the game properly, and especially if you're a more competitive person. Overwatch has several different types of matches, which are all pretty similar to one another. However, they do differentiate enough to make gameplay more fun and entertaining, and you never know which match you're gonna be thrown into. So there are these King of the Hill type of matches where the teams fight over a certain point in the game. Whoever dominates the point eventually wins the game. Some maps have 1 point, others have 2. It really depends on the map. Then there are those payload maps I mentioned earlier, where you have to either escort or prevent a moving vehicle to be escorted by the opposing team, depending on which side you're on. And finally, the game has these hybrid maps, which start you off by defending or attacking a point, similar to the King of the Hill maps. And if the attacking team manages to take over the point, then they get to escort a payload, which the other team has to prevent from being properly escorted to the end of the stage. Now, you can play all this with and against real-life people, or you can play with real people against AI opponents. Or you can customize a game and put AIs on both sides. Now, in all honesty, you can't really get much practice against AIs because they're not very good, regardless of difficulty. So other than practicing your aim, you won't really learn anything about the game that way. In my opinion, it's best to just jump in and play against real-life opponents as soon as you are done with the simple and easy to understand tutorial.
Let's get started.
Now, I already said that Overwatch is a very accessible game, and I mean that in more than just one way. Let me explain. For one, this game is very accessible to visually impaired people such as myself. Usually in these online competitive games, it's very difficult for me to distinguish my team from the opponent's team. What Overwatch does is it surrounds the opponent's team with a red outline, making them easier to spot. Of course, due to my severe visual impairment, I have a hard time seeing them despite that, but they are much easier to spot than they would be in other games. The game also has a very robust array of options with which you can customize your game to your needs. You can adjust the mouse sensitivity individually for each character. You can also change the type and color of the crosshair you're using for each character. Now, in all honesty, I can't see the smaller crosshairs regardless of size and color, but that's a different story altogether. Either way, the game really has many quality of life options that truly help people customize everything they need for nice, smooth, quality gameplay, and I really respect that. Now, at the time of this recording, we have 21 different heroes, and when I say different, I really do mean 21 distinctive, completely different characters you can choose from. And I'll go so far as to say that each and every one of these characters makes the game feel completely different. It's like playing a different game when you pick a different character. So, what people need to understand is that getting good with as many characters as you possibly can is the key to being successful in this game, and the key to not being a burden on your team. Because, now, many people, new players to Overwatch, come from, I suppose you could say, a Smash Bros. Or in general fighting game mentality, where they think that they can just pick a character, get good as them, and they don't ever have to switch to another character. That's not how Overwatch works. Now, when choosing a character, a good Overwatch player always takes into account their own team's composition and the opposing team's composition. It's very important to choose a character that fits the situation you're in. Otherwise, you're going to be a burden on your team. You're going to drag the entire team down just because you chose a character that gets easily killed and provides the opposing team with a major tactical advantage, a major opening. So do not stubbornly stick to a single character when you see that things aren't going well. However, you can only choose the right character for the right situation after you've learned the characters more, after you understand how they work. And in order to do that, you need lots of practice and lots of dying. So just because you're dying a lot at first doesn't mean that you should be switching a character immediately. You need to first learn each character, and you need to understand how to tackle different situations with these characters. So maybe you're dying simply because you don't understand how to deal with a certain situation you're in. So in that case, it's worth sticking to this character for as long as possible until you are certain that the character is not suited for that particular situation. And you can only do that by learning your character and understanding the opposing characters. A good Overwatch, not necessarily a skilled Overwatch player, a good Overwatch player understands how characters interact with the environment, how characters interact with each other, which characters counter one another and which work best together. The game is composed of very deep and interesting systems that are in place and are not apparent when you start playing Overwatch for the first time. So the more you play, the more you understand these things. It helps to watch some video tutorials and to understand how other people play the game. However, whatever you do, do not turn Overwatch into a chore for yourself. Understand this is a game and it's supposed to be fun first and foremost. And the more you play, the more you'll learn and understand its world, its characters, and how it all works. So don't stress over it too much. Now, as I said, at the time of this recording, we have 21 different heroes or characters. They're each grouped in 4 different groups. We have attack characters, defense characters, tanks, and support heroes. You have to understand that even though they are in 4 different groups, each and every one of these characters plays completely differently. So let's take the tanks for example. Normally you'd expect that a tank is supposed to defend a group and I guess defend a point or some kind of an objective and draw enemy aggro, as is the case in MMORPGs. And while that is generally true, the different tanks in this game play completely differently and are good at different things. Some of them are, yes, best for defending the other players and absorbing damage. Others are better suited for disrupting the enemy's backline, for example. Then we have tanks that are more aggressive, that function as almost as attack characters. I already talked about the fact that I cannot see well, so playing ranged heroes that require precise aiming is out of the question for me. However, the attack group of heroes has characters that are ranged but do not require precise aiming. So when needed, even I can choose one of these characters and help my team and maybe even turn the situation around. Now, I personally play tanks because they don't require precise aiming and such. And of course, when I switch to ranged characters, they're not as tough, they can't take as many hits, so by the time I notice that somebody is shooting at me or I notice a distant turret, I'm already dead most of the time. However, every once in a while I luck out and manage to turn the tables on the bad guys and things are great, but you know, that is when I get lucky. Proper communication with your teammates is also exceptionally important when it comes to being successful in combat. Understanding the team's composition on both your end and the opponent's end is very important, of course, and switching characters is important, but if you cannot communicate with your team properly, then chances are you will not be able to win certain matches. Now, to be fair, when it comes to bad team communication, I'm to blame as well. I can't just read what's said in the chat box at a glance. I really have to focus on the chat box and maybe even get closer to my monitor and zoom in further with my glasses to actually see what's being said there. So, that's a problem. And even if somebody says something, for example, somebody says stick with them or whatever, I often have no idea who's saying that, because reading people's names above their characters is downright impossible for me unless I really, again, have to focus on it and waste time doing that to actually read them. Hitting tab does open up a list of characters, everybody who's playing on both sides. However, even there, again, I have to take my time to actually read people's names to make out what's being written there. So, in all honesty, I'm really not cut out for this game in more ways than one. And let's say somebody is using voice chat. Now, I took ages to actually notice this. When somebody is talking, there's this indicator who's actually talking in the top left corner of the screen. Now, that's completely out of my field of view when I play, and even if I do see it, it's so tiny, I absolutely cannot make out who's saying it or anything. It just, I see there's a little bit of blue and an icon there, but I can't actually see what it is. So, thanks to these problems, I can never play the game properly and in competitive mode get anywhere, because by the time I see who's saying something or read the chat box, we'd all be dead. But enough about stuff that I cannot see, and let's talk a little bit about stuff that I can see, and that is the gorgeous, absolutely stunning, beautiful cartoony graphics with vibrant colors and detailed environments that truly look, but don't quite feel like a DreamWorks or Pixar cartoon, and I'll tell you why. Because Overwatch, unfortunately, is a multiplayer-only, competitive, completely devoid of story experience. It's the kind of game that puts a bunch of characters together. They all have their backstories alright, and we can read those backstories in some online comics they released. They have animated shorts they released on YouTube and such. But that's not enough for me to enjoy the game's world properly. When this game was announced, I was severely disappointed to find out that it was a mere competitive-only, multiplayer-only game with no single-player story mode. And to this day, that's something that I cannot get over, because this world is absolutely perfect for a nice, beautiful third-person. Now, mind you, I really would like a single-player third-person action-adventure Overwatch where I can actually see these amazing character designs I play as. And that's another thing Overwatch has going for it. Each and every one of its characters is designed absolutely wonderfully visually. And on top of that, each and every one of them has different skins you can equip. And they all look great. They really, really do all look cool. Now, of course, some characters have better skins than others, but it's all a matter of taste. I'm sure that there is something for everybody there. There's a lot the game has to offer as far as cosmetics go. However, the way you acquire these cosmetics is not that good. The more you play, the more experience you earn. Whether you lose or win in casual mode, you earn experience. With this experience, you level up, and the only reason you're leveling up is to acquire loot boxes. Now, these loot boxes, of course, as is the case with many games nowadays, contain a random selection of items. Now, these items range from completely useless stuff like user icons or sprays that you can slap onto different surfaces in the game for some reason. I don't even understand what purpose they serve. Then there are different voice lines that do add a little bit of charm to your character, different victory poses and such. And, of course, the ever so popular and sought after skins. Now, these skins range in value. You have regular skins that cost very little gold, and you can also acquire gold from these loot boxes, of course. And legendary skins that cost quite a lot. Now, and are supposedly more rare, and they don't drop as often, although I must admit, I have gotten a fair share of legendary skins, and especially for characters I actually play as, so that's pretty cool. Now, here's the problem. These loot boxes can also often contain, and you're bound to be getting a lot of those, duplicates. And these duplicates are immediately turned into gold, which is all well and good, except the amount of gold you get for a duplicate item is nothing compared to the item's cost, so you really don't get much at all. And believe me, there is a reason for this. Even the gold you acquire through these loot boxes is very little compared to how much it should be. The reason for this is because Blizzard, or maybe Activision, I don't know who decided this was a good idea, decided to add microtransactions to Overwatch, meaning that for an obscene amount of money you can buy 50 loot boxes, which is the cost of an entire video game, in hopes that maybe you will win something that you like, because the game doesn't really give you much gold in these loot boxes. The duplicates you get earn you very little gold, so honestly, what are you spending your hard-earned money on? I understand what it means to buy digital items you want, because in MMORPGs I have bought mounts, I have bought pets. However, I know what I'm buying there. That's my own personal choice to spend my money on something that would enhance my immersion in that world. And in my opinion, as somebody who really cares about visuals, who really cares about graphics, who really cares about immersion in a world, these skins are part of the gameplay. Alright, that's how I feel, because it enhances my gaming experience in this world, in this game. So yes, they are an important part of the game for me. This goes to people who say, hey, it's just cosmetics, you don't have to buy them. No, I don't have to buy them, and I won't buy them because I don't want to spend my hard-earned money on something completely random that I may or may not win. And this is why I consider this to be the lowest form of money extraction from people, especially people who have addiction problems, because honestly, this is something that, in my opinion, should be illegal. And I said it, and I don't care what brainwashed people have to say about this, because nowadays people are brainwashed by big corporations, by this whole modern day Facebook, Twitter, tweetbook, I don't even know world, which fortunately I'm not a part of yet, and I hope I don't become a part of it. It's not normal to include something like this in a game that costs as much as Overwatch does. It's not normal to include it in anything, but I can sort of understand why certain free-to-play games have a model like this, even though I don't agree with it, but it's been around since forever. However, Overwatch and these idiotic microtransactions, they don't go well together. They are an insult to us as users, as fans of the game. Whether you agree with this or not, I don't care, because if you disagree with this, honestly, I do not respect your opinion. I don't have to respect everybody's opinion, and anybody who disagrees with this, who is fine with these loot boxes being sold in the game for as much money as they're being sold in general, I cannot respect your opinion, and that's final. Now, let's talk about something good about the game, because this game, gameplay-wise and in terms of aesthetics, has everything going for it. And that's the game's sound, which is exceptionally important in gameplay. Anyway, when I got Overwatch, I thought that, hey, I could put some music on and just go in and start fighting people. Well, that down proved to be a recipe for disaster right away, because I had no idea what was going on in the game. And it was then that I realized just how important sound was when it came to orienting yourself in the game's world. Because the game doesn't have music of its own, except when music is actually needed to increase tension or when the matches start and such. You really need to focus on the sound in the game. And that's how you know who's coming from where, because different characters have different sounding footsteps. And you really need to pay attention to how far or how close these footsteps are to you. And especially to somebody like me who can't see, if I can't hear on top of that, I would absolutely have no idea what I'm doing. And that's actually what happened when I put some music on. Now, you can balance the music and the in-game sound alright to be able to listen to both, but if you really want to be efficient at your game, you really need to focus on the in-game sound, because there's a lot of audio cues that you really need to pay attention to if you want to successfully navigate the world and know where enemies are coming from, what they're doing, because usually enemies announce their special ultimate attacks and such. So sound is exceptionally important in this game, and it's very well made too. Whoa, I did not realize how long this review is until now. And I knew it would be a long review, alright? I mean, I don't write my reviews up front. I just talk about whatever's on my mind when reviewing games. And I knew it would be a long one, but I didn't expect it to be this long. So we're wrapping it up here. If you manage to see through this whole thing, you'll understand that I really love Overwatch, even though it's not really my kind of game. So that's about it. I say give the game a chance if you can. Don't buy it up front. Try it out for free at a friend's house or something. because I can't tell you to buy something that you may or may not be able to play or enjoy. I don't know, because this is my first game like this. I have no experience with this type of games, so I can't go and recommend it to anybody, but I can say that for me it was a very good purchase. It was very well worth the money, and I spent hundreds of hours on it, as you can see. So there's that, and I hope you'll enjoy the game if you do decide to play it. If you don't, be sure to play something else that you really love and have fun with.
Danger! Shoot her on the roof! I repeat, shoot her on the roof!
This is a secure channel. No one's...